Welcome, and thank you for listening in on today's economic update, where we discuss the unique dynamics of the housing market during this downturn. Leading today's update is Danielle Marceau, Senior Economist here at Previdere. Danielle, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks, Chrissy. Yeah, today I want to talk a lot about the housing market and what is going on behind the scenes when it comes to the really robust growth that we have been seeing, and see what sort of insights or forward-looking factors we're paying attention to get an idea of how long this robust trend is likely to last. So just to set the stage, we are still in the midst of this global pandemic. We actually have seen the third wave of new cases actually surpass our 7-day average summer peak. So we are now seeing a higher number of daily cases than either of the prior two waves here. The interesting dynamic that's going on here is that new cases in rural counties are what's really outnumbering urban now. Very much so a shift from what we were seeing during the earlier months of the pandemic. We're still seeing a lot of business closures. Consumers are hesitant to re-engage in public life, going to restaurants, entertainment. Mobility has really stalled out when you think about how much people are moving around, leaving homes. And we are starting to see some pullback in some areas of consumer spending. Overall, from a macroeconomic perspective, growth or recovery is slowing and is really uneven by industry. All of this is saying, the consumer is being faced with a lot of headwinds. Businesses are struggling. We are in the midst of this economic recession with no near-term end in sight. And at the same time, the housing market is absolutely on fire. It's definitely one of the times where we're seeing a very, very big divergence in different sectors and different parts of the economy and how they're actually performing during this business cycle. So there is absolutely no doubt that the housing market is doing very, very well. But if you look here, you can actually see that there was a lot of tailwinds heading into 2020 within the housing market. So even pre-pandemic, if you look at what you're seeing is a quarterly year-over-year growth. So the percent change from the same quarter of the prior year. The darker blue line here, blue bar, is new home sales. The lighter one is existing home sales. So new constructions versus existing homes, just a good gauge of homes being sold. And you can see, especially in the new home sales, there was a lot of growth happening in the industry last year, heading into this year. Well, each one, new and existing, took a little bit of a one-quarter dip from the pandemic. They have returned. So we can see that growth in the third quarter of this year, new home sales were up 33.9% from the third quarter of 2019, and existing home sales were up 13.2%. So definitely a lot of growth. I'd like to point out, though, that it had a lot of momentum behind it heading into this year. So this robust growth that we're experiencing today isn't necessarily a direct cause and effect of the pandemic. There was a lot of strength heading into this year, heading into 2020. Just looking at housing starts. Housing starts this winter hit the highest level it had seen since 2006. So there was a lot of activity going on in the market. And there is early indications that this is likely to continue even through the current month. Realtor.com says pending sales right now are up about 40.3% from last year, but really hasn't seen double-digit growth year over year since mid-2019. So a lot of optimism behind it. But it was, again, not necessarily a factor of the pandemic. It had a lot of tailwinds heading into the pandemic. Speaking to that, some of the data that we have from our Prosper Analytics consumer survey, this was really interesting to show that this is the ratio of survey respondents who intend to purchase a house during the next 6 months. This is a good gauge of future home purchase activity, a really great leading indicator. And if you look at the average survey results over the first quarter of this year, so January, February, March, it reached an unprecedented high. So a record high level of the ratio of people, just those out there in the United States that were intending to purchase a house during the first 6 months of 2020. So there's definitely a lot of optimism there. The other thing to look at is that during the most recent 2 quarters, those numbers have sank a little bit. So we are starting to see a pullback in the future intent of people to purchase homes. That's really broad from an overall United States at the macroeconomic level, but there is this other topic I really do want to touch on a little bit. You see a lot of articles out there in the mainstream media about this urban exodus. People that are just abandoning the large cities and are choosing to live in a more rural or suburban area. There's a lot of anecdotal articles out there, a lot of anecdotal evidence suggesting that this may be happening. However, there's not a whole lot of hard data that is suggesting that this is actually showing up in the numbers. And so I want to talk a little bit about that. If you look at the chart here on the left, this is a survey, something that's more soft data versus hard, a survey of realtors. So this is actually saying, ask realtors if your potential home buyer has changed their criteria for a home, describing where they want to purchase a home. If that changed as a result of COVID-19, what was the changes? Where do these people want to look for homes? And in this sort of soft survey level data, absolutely, we're seeing that those people who did change their preferences, again, this is only surveying those who did, more of them wanted to look in the more suburban, rural, small town rather than the urban or the resort areas. With some of that soft data, this is what is fueling a lot of the content that you see out there around this potential urban exodus. However, when you look at more of the hard data, something like views, online page and search activity views. If you look at the dark blue bar is 2019, the light blue bar is 2020. And so this is saying for all for sale listing page views. So any time that a page is viewed of a listing home, what is the percentage of the total that is rural homes being viewed, suburban homes, and urban homes? And you can see there is absolutely no change in the ratio or the percentage of views within each one of these areas. There's not been a statistically significant change in the share of overall views from rural, suburban, or urban. Also, using some of the Zillow data that's out there, we have not really seen a major difference between urban and suburban actual sales, or in this case, using pending sales, so sales of homes that have gone under contract. What's really interesting is the yellow line here is urban areas, the blue line here is suburban. So absolutely, at the peak of the pandemic, we did see a little bit of a difference, that the suburban area codes, zip codes, were performing a little bit better. But by mid-summer, we've seen that they have converged again. So on the left, you see the United States as a whole, then you see West, Midwest, and South. You can see that they've converged again, performing relatively similarly, and even the urban potentially outperforming. The one big exception to all of this, and I caveat this, is a few major metro areas. So the Northeast, absolutely, we're seeing that. That is driven almost entirely by New York City. So when you look at more micro level data, we do see that this exodus is happening for a few key cities, and that is it. San Francisco, New York, LA. There is some evidence that suggests that it may be happening there in those major metropolitan areas. However, Survey data is actually suggesting that they are not necessarily leaving the city for rural and suburban areas, but rather for smaller urban areas, smaller metropolitan areas like Tampa, Columbus, Ohio, places like that. But overall, at the national, this is not a national trend that we're seeing in the data just yet. I like to say we fail to reject the null hypothesis here, right? I'm not saying that it absolutely is not happening. We're saying that the hard data has not yet come out to support that there is this mass exodus out of urban areas into more rural. Again, with the exception of those few major metropolitan areas. So, in summary, I was saying, the housing market is on fire, not that direct driver of COVID, right? It had a lot of tailwinds heading into this year. There was a lot of intent to purchase homes heading into this year. There may be some of that from COVID, people wanting to expand their footprint, have a larger square footage of home because they're spending more time at home. That could be happening. We know that the housing market is performing very, very well. But however, there are some potential early signs that overall the market may be slowing down during the coming months. Not saying anything of a major contraction or anything like that, but a slowdown to some of that robust growth. And one of them is some of the mortgage loan application. This is a weekly index. We're looking at 3 types of loans here. This is just looking at the FHA, USDA, and VA mortgage applications. As you can see, a big spike this summer. Record low mortgage rates are definitely spurring mortgage applications, but they have since started to decline again when you're looking at this 3-week moving average. So there is a little bit of a slowdown happening from that mid-summer peak in loan applications. So in summary, absolutely, the housing market is a clear winner when we're looking across the different sectors of the U.S. economy. It is doing very well. People are choosing to invest their money in homes. New and existing homes are performing extremely well, but it really is across the country. There's not yet solid data supporting this hypothesis that widespread Americans are leaving urban cities for more rural and suburban. And that there are some early indications that the housing market may cool. Looking at some of the generally declining mortgage applications, as well as the decline in the survey data you saw at the very beginning with the purchase plans around homes, and those that intend to purchase a home in the next 6 months has also declined a little bit, suggesting that while the market is likely to do better than many other sectors of the U.S. economy as we navigate through this economic recession, that there is some cooling down that's likely to happen as we head into 2021.
Thanks, Danielle. It's clear from our weekly economic updates that we are in a time of unprecedented uncertainty and volatility. As businesses head into the 2021 planning cycle, I want to remind everyone listening in about Prevadary's economic scenario planning solution. The insights from scenario modeling can improve strategic, financial, and operational plans for 2021 and beyond. You can learn more about the solution by visiting the web address on your screen. And that concludes today's webinar. If you have any questions for Danielle, please contact me at cwissinger@prevadary.com. And as always, thank you for listening in and have a nice day.